Hello, I'm Greg McChesney with USAA. I'm a staff engineer responsible for our content delivery network as well as some of our load balancing functions. USAA, as we mentioned a minute ago, we're a 100-year-old company. We were founded by 25 Army soldiers who were unable to find anybody else who would insure them. So this was back in San Antonio in 1922. So they all got together and said, hey, what if we insured ourselves, right? Because back then, especially, a lot of the insurance companies were very regional. So as you moved, you had to get a new company every time. We are member-owned, so our members who we insure actually own the company, so we're private. We focus, as Margaret said, on the military members and their families, really trying to drive what does the military need to be successful, right? She mentioned TDY, she mentioned deployments. Those are kind of things that our representatives, when you call in, understand and really know what you're going through at the time. And we provide insurance and financial and banking services across the industry. So Margaret was talking about mission, and we start every meeting with what we call the mission moment, right? And it's really understanding why are we here, what are we doing today to help service the member, right? So every employee, every meeting, when we have a big employee meeting, someone will get up and talk about what the mission means to them, right? And so our mission is really to facilitate the financial needs of our members and associates through a full range of highly competitive products. But going above that, we have to figure out, how does that mean to me, right? So looking back at my story, my father was in the military. He did 25 years in the Army, and we traveled quite a bit. I spent many years in Germany. I was actually born in Florida, and somehow I ended up in Texas. It was really hard because I lived in Germany. Have you been to Germany before? Nice, beautiful weather, and then I moved to El Paso, Texas, where I know we got off the plane. It was like 1,000 degrees and very hot. But anyways, but I've stayed there ever since. But what he was telling me was when he first joined the military, his officer was like, hey, you need insurance, and this is a company that will take care of you. They understand it, they get it. And so he got with USAA about 50 years ago now, and he's been a member ever since. And so they were always able to take care of us. When we went to Germany, we could get car insurance there. We came back to America, car insurance, home insurance, things like, if you've ever traveled to Germany with the military, they actually ship half of your stuff in advance, and then they ship the other half of it later, right? And so what kind of insurance do you need for that? How do you ship your car across overseas? What are the licensing requirements for the cars? All that kind of stuff, USAA was able to take care of and handle for them. So that's really where I learned about USAA. And then when I was in college, I was walking through a job fair, and I saw a USAA booth, and I was like, I know those guys. And then I've been there ever since, about 13 years now. So. Oops. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about, what are our requirements for multiple CDNs. I will be the first to say we're not a Fastly-only customer, so don't throw anything at the Fastly team, but really about why we went down the road of 2 CDNs. Then kind of how we ended up on Fastly versus some of the other competitors. Then we're going to talk about VCL. I love VCL, anyways. And then we're going to talk about computed edge, and then some of the pros and cons, and then I'll end with a little takeaway. All right, so multiple CDNs. So the real reason for this is internally we've been driven to an architecture of how do we provide redundancy all the time. As Margaret mentioned before, there are people, so a lot of our members, or customers, we call them members, are deployed, right? And so some of them are on ships, some of them are stationed at foreign operating bases, that sort of thing. And they only get the internet a few hours a day, if that. And so when they're having to transact and do business with us, we need that to be quick and painless and work the first time, right? Because they could be talking to their family members, they could be responding to emails, they could be doing whatever. They don't need to be spending time wasting it on us, right? So if they're trying to get on to pay a bill or something like that, it needs to work. It needs to work at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever time they're given the internet for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it has to work. And so internally, we've gone down an architecture of let's do hot, active data centers, that sort of thing. And we started looking and saying, okay, well, we have one CDN. So what happens if the CDN dies? Now what do we do? And so that was kind of where the genesis of, hey, maybe we need 2 CDNs and kind of go there. In addition, the federal government has been asking and saying, hey, you guys really need to have redundancy. Because you're banking and you're one of the top banks in the US, you have to have the redundancy in case something happens, right? And then kind of pile on top, all of the major CDN providers have had some opportunities over the last years where they, we all make mistakes, we get it, right? But how do we insulate ourselves from that, right? So all the major ones have had it. So we're really trying to figure out, okay, if we have 2 of them, the chances of both of them going down are a lot less likely than having one. All right, so why Fastly? There are a few other CDN providers out there, but the main reasons were they were kind of a leading edge provider of, they have a great distribution of servers across the environment. or across the world rather, and they're one of the easiest to work with in regards to request processing, right? So we do a lot of stuff on the edge right now with our other CDN platform, and so we really wanted the ability to change requests, change response, serve friendly error pages, all that kind of stuff in line without having to do any outside calls. And we also didn't want to have to use professional services to do it. That's one of the nice things about Fastly, is you can go into the portal and do whatever you want, right? They're there to help you if you need help, but if you just want to do it yourself, we have a team of engineers. They're qualified. Let them go to town, let them do their job, right? And then signal science is another interesting one, right? Because we do a lot of security on the edge, and so we needed that feature parity of security on the edge. And then last but not least, private connectivity. That's one of our core bread and butter is we're actually privately peered with our CDNs, so we don't advertise our environment to the internet. It helps reduce the threat service as well as allows us to a lot more control over speed and latency between them. All right, now VCL. I'm sure all of you have seen this graph before. This is actually from the Fastly marketing website, if you've ever been there. But it's really describing the state of how you process requests through VCL. And coming from a different CDN platform, this was like foreign science to me and my team. We were like, wow, so all of it's stateless, so I have to keep track of stuff as I move along, right? Because in our case, we like to log a lot of things. And so when you start to receive and you add data as you go along, we basically had to make the request larger and larger and larger through every state to get it to the log line at the very end. And that became very cumbersome and very confusing. And there's always these cases where you're like, oh, I want to serve a friendly error page. So then I have to restart the flow and you end up with a circle. One of the presenters earlier had the giant tree of sadness. That's where you ended up with the VCL. With the VCL, I think it was our CNN friend, but with the VCL configuration. And so we were looking at it, and our sales guy comes to us and says, hey, man, we have this new product called Computed Edge. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. And I was like, all right, are they going to replace VCL with it someday? And he goes, maybe someday. And I was like, all right, then let's just start with that. So I mentioned a little bit about VCL impressions. We weren't really super excited about it. Passing data was painful. Logging was painful. It is a industry standard language, but it's not one that a lot of people know, right? And the debugging options weren't great as well. So we decided, you know what, let's give this Computed Edge thing a try. So what we did is we actually took our entire configuration and rewrote it in Computed Edge, which I know we're one of the only people that wanted to be crazy enough to try that. But we took the whole thing and we ran it in Computed Edge, and there was a lot of main reasons for that. One of them was time to market. Because we were able to use a standard language like JavaScript, we can bring an engineer in who understands JavaScript. They can look at it and read and understand it. Versus VCL, where they really have to understand the flow and have that diagram from before. So skill training was another one. We have quite a few engineers that understand JavaScript. Not a single person understood VCL. So it was either spend weeks teaching a VCL and all the intricate workings of it, or really try JavaScript. Ease of use was another one. As I think it was Tyler mentioned earlier, you can type VCL init, VCL compute, VCL build, and you're done, right? So those tools that they had come up with really made it easy for us to deploy and move to the CI/CD pipeline that we're aiming for. So it allows us to do a lot less of the maintenance and the overall. We're not copying and pasting VCL in or any of that kind of stuff. We're able to do it all through a pipeline, do integration testing, and all that sort of stuff from there. All right, so now we get to some of the pros and cons. The good thing about Computed Edge is, they mentioned earlier, you can run any language you want. We ended up choosing JavaScript because it was the easiest to understand. How many of you are Rust fans in the room? Rust fans? The two Rust fans in the room, everybody else? They downloaded the Rust sample, they looked at it and said, man, this was not a good idea, and they closed it. It's funny because I actually tried the Rust one, because the Rust one is a lot faster, but no one else on my team understood how to do Rust, right? They had never written C before, and it was kind of a foreign concept to them. And so from a supportability, we were like, all right, JS has got to be a better choice. And the other nice thing is you have full request and response in one flow. So you can make modifications at the top, you can make sub calls out, all of those sorts of things as part of your request. You don't have to do a restart a flow or anything like that. It's all controlled in the JavaScript. And you can you can also use libraries that are existing. So instead of reinventing the wheel, you can use libraries that are already out there. And last but not least, there are quite a bit easier to log in Computed Edge. So they have the Fastly log trail, which basically allows you to tap right into the logs as they're going across. And so you can, if you want to do a debug statement, you can just do a debug statement, look right at your console and see what happens versus having to output it to the screen or something other like that. So it makes it a lot easier. The tool set itself is a lot easier to use and work with. Now, there's always bad sides to things, right? The first one, the Fastly people will be all sad at me with this one, but cost, right? It is a little more expensive than the traditional VCL platform because you're paying for runtime and that sort of thing. And it is an emerging technology, right? So there's still a lot to be said about, is it going to work the way you expect it to? How does it handle under load? That sort of thing. All right, so we'll finish off with some key takeaways. I know I talked a little faster, so we'll get Margaret ready to go over there. But first off is know your requirements, really. So understand what your business needs to be successful, and really understand, maybe multi-CDN is not the right solution for you if you don't need that kind of availability and that kind of management overhead. But maybe it is, right, if you do need that kind of availability. Don't be afraid to try new things, and always try new tech. So whenever anybody has a beta offering, I'm like, sign me up, let's try it, right? Because even if you're just trying in a dev and test environment, at least you know where they're going with whatever the platform is in the future, right? And those beta offerings a lot of times give you the chance to get in and say, hey, this is not something that we're ever going to use, right? Or it is, but I really wish it worked this way, right? And provide that feedback back to the engineering teams to really get your business case in front of them so that they can more adequately support you in the future. All right, and then the last one is plan for when you're gone. This is really about the Rust example, right? So I started writing things in Rust, and then I thought, well, my team, they're never going to be able to support this if I go. And my boss always tells me, Greg, you always have to prepare for when the ice cream truck hits you. And I was like, man, is that a joke of like a fat joke at me? And he's like, no. He's like, you're walking across the street and the ice cream truck runs you over, man. Someone has to be able to support this when you're gone, right? And so, and everybody's laughing about the ice cream truck. You're all going to think about it, see it going down the street, and be like, oh, man. But anyways, the moral of that story is really you want to be able to take a vacation at some point in time, right? And you want to be able to get out of there, and you want to be able to leave for a week and have someone else handle it and manage it without you. And so you have to make sure that your team can understand whatever you deploy, whether it's computed edge or whether it's VCL or whatever, right? They need to understand how it works so that you're not the only person who does it, right? We're a big team where I come from. There's 8 of us on the team, and we all understand how it all works, right? And we need to make sure that we have that knowledge because, again, ice cream truck, vacation, whatever, you have to have that ability to, to be able to step away when you need to. Or when you want to get promoted or something like that, right? You can't be stuck there forever. So, and finishing off, that's all I have. Thank you so much.